million tons of ordnance over Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. It's a lot of ordnance. And I'm not trying to make light of wartime. I'm not. Like, war is serious. People died. It's not great. It's very bad. But I also believe that I would be missing an opportunity to adapt a new euphemism for going to the bathroom. That is, I'm going to drop my ordinance. Welcome back to Privy. Privy is a podcast about bathrooms, recorded from my home bathroom. I'm your host, Hunter Hoover, and I love bathrooms. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. And here in the United States, at the point of this episode's release, we just celebrated our nation's 250th anniversary. We did it. For a lot of people that live outside of the U.S., that 250 is not the biggest thing ever. Like, there's lots of nations that have been around a lot longer than 250 years. That said, it's still an accomplishment. I'm proud to be an American. I'm thankful for the freedoms that we have, to those who fought to protect them and died in doing so. And so, this 250th anniversary of our country is a big one. Friend of the show and former guest Michael Wall let me know that a 250th anniversary is called a semi-quincentennial. So, like, that's pretty neat and stuff. It's a long time. It's kind of a weird way to put it. 250 is easier to say. Just saying. But it's also a reminder that in the grand scheme of things, like, America is young as a nation. There's much we can and should still seek to accomplish as a country. Here on Privy, one of the things we try not to take for granted are the freedoms we enjoy in this country and the safety we have in relation to what can be accomplished due to those freedoms. Those freedoms were bought and paid for literally by the blood of Americans. The safety we have in relation. And we recognize that freedom is not free. Never has been, never will be. You can't just say, well, I declare that these groups of people or this person or this idea is free. It costs something. We will tell you that every time we say goodbye on the show, no matter who the organization is that we are supporting, we will remind you that freedom isn't free. Out of thankfulness, which is actually much of what this show is built on, is being thankful for the things that we have. In our case, it's the simple truth that we have these toilets that we can do our shameful business in, and it helps make it disappear. But much of the show is built on this attitude of thankfulness. We take a look at browner, less beautiful parts of our nation's history in the month of July as a means of celebrating the moments of bathroom history that help make our country great. We've covered a lot when we do our Privy's patriotic episodes. We've talked about privy pits and the artifacts of American history that are found in them, Ben Franklin's questionable showering habits, and the brown sidewalk at Disney that is reminiscent of the days where there was no plumbing and we just dumped our poop out the window and rinsed it down the street. Again, it was a different time. Today on Privy, we're going to celebrate and discuss the country's freedoms and our 250th anniversary with a bathroom-packed and themed American topic. We need to dive back into some observations that we'll look at later, in fact, as at the point of this episode's record, Joey Chestnuts has not eaten his very, very good stack of hot dogs. We look forward to seeing the results of that, and by this episode's release, you will know that Joey Chestnuts has eaten, fill in the blank here, many hot dogs. It's a lot. Good luck, Joey. I pray for you the day after. First, we need to take a look back at history to set the stage for today's topic. The Vietnam War officially lasted almost 20 years, from 1955 to 1975. During World War II, there were movements of decolonization throughout the world. One such instance was the formerly French colonized Vietnam. As the Vietnamese people decolonized from their French influence, Japanese forces took advantage of the situation and invaded Vietnam. Caught in the middle was the Viet Minh, led by Ho Chi Minh, who sought for a, quote, independent Vietnam. Later, when the Japanese pulled out of Vietnam, they left Emperor Bao Dai in control. Ho Chi Minh's forces rose up and took over the northern city of Hanoi, declaring a, quote, democratic republic of Vietnam. You'll notice that I stick some of these terms in quotes because, as is often the case when we have these political organizations and groups abroad and here in the States who stand for something, quote unquote, they'll often label it things like, I love free hugs and ice cream coalition. And really, they're trying to kill your kids. I wish I was making some of this up, and that's an example to the extreme, but political organizations and nations throughout history have done this. What we label a thing is used to propagandize the group. Trying to take back control, the state of Vietnam was established with Emperor Bao. He was the one who was left in place from the Japanese when they pulled out, as its leader, the capital being in Saigon in 1949. Both sides of this Vietnam conflict at the time wanted the same thing, a unified Vietnam. The problem with unity is it only goes as far as you can get people to agree about what to be unified on. Here at Privy, we're all unified on the fact that bathrooms are great. But what these groups would unify around really started to take the cake. I dropped some cake. Ho Chi Minh wanted it modeled after communist nations like China and Russia. Bao, with the Japanese and earlier French influence, wanted it modeled after the economic and cultural ties to the Western world. You see that French influence still bleeding through, even though Vietnam had been decolonialized. From here, conflict between the communist Vietnamese forces in the north and the French-influenced Western leading forces in the south ensued. There was conflict for some time, but the tide began to turn in 1954 at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu. Now, once again, I have to check my ignorance. I'm not Vietnamese. I know you couldn't tell by looking at me. I'm wearing a red, white, and blue Costco t-shirt, for goodness sakes. Nothing screams I'm not Vietnamese like a red, white, and blue Costco t-shirt. It does scream 250th anniversary of America, though. There you go. But at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, and at this battle, the Ho Chi Minh beat the French-tied portions of the Vietnamese in the country. As a result, the country of Vietnam was split along the 17th parallel, with Ho Chi Minh controlling the north and Bao, that French-Japanese tied ruler, placed in the south. All this is going on in Vietnam, and meanwhile, here in these United States, Cold War tensions made America highly suspect of any communist leanings throughout the world. And I want to note, rightfully so, communism doesn't work, and that's the end of that conversation. With a newly communist-friendly power moving in Vietnam, This really got America's attention. It was like, wait, what's going on down there? And while America was not actively involved at the outset, concerns related to the domino theory were building. The domino theory is much like the Taco Bell theory of bathrooming. And it's the idea that if one thing falls, the rest will go with it, like a domino, if you will. If I get the tummy rumbles on the Taco Bell started, it only gets worse until there is disaster, usually in the toilet, hopefully in the toilet. It's the times when it's not in the toilet that I think it's truly labeled a disaster. Yeah. In the case of Vietnam, the domino theory was the idea that if there was any Southeast Asian country that fell to communism, they would all fall to communism as a result. They would see that the communists would see that it actually worked. They have gotten their agenda in the region, and that the rest of the world there would follow. President Kennedy, as such, increased aid to the region, but military intervention waited and was paused at this time. When Lyndon B. Johnson took over the presidency, they ramped up involvement in the area. In 1964, again, this is almost 10 full years into the official Vietnam War, Vietnamese torpedo boats attacked U.S. vessels in the Gulf of Tonkin, leading to U.S. military retaliation. The Gulf of Tonkin Resolution was passed, and it gave permission for regular U.S. bombing raids in Vietnam in what is called Operation Rolling Thunder. Operation Rolling Thunder, again, see the distress I feel when bathrooming post-Panda Express. Military troops were then further called into the region to help support capitalist-leaning southern Vietnamese efforts to stop the spread of communism in the country. While there is ongoing tensions related to the end of the Vietnam War, there was distrust related to the government's purpose of the war. Troop morale was at an all-time low. Propaganda, televising the horrors of war to the U.S. people, and reports about what is being said back home weren't lining up with the soldiers' perspective on the ground. This led to an ugly end of war resolution. I want to note, it's been said, I believe Ben Shapiro is the one who's said it, but it's that the American people they grow tired easily of seeing catastrophes on their televisions. And as the Vietnam War is one of the first wars that news coverage and reports can be televised back home, footage can be shown to the American people, they didn't like what they saw. War is ugly. And the soldiers in Vietnam, they did not feel supported. And when America finally pulled out of the war, it didn't take long for what they had tried to stop, the spread of communism to Vietnam, to happen anyway. The Vietnam War went in the official record as a loss. And what is most unfortunate is because of the loss, because of the perception during the time of the war, there was an awful mistreatment of American service members for their involvement. First of all, if you're an American service member, a vet, thank you for your service, officially, no matter what conflict you were involved in. It's a great reminder, the Vietnam War, and any war that we might enter as a country, that you cannot support what conflicts we are in and still support the people who defend the freedoms we enjoy in the midst of those conflicts. Often military service members, they might not agree with the war's efforts either, but it's their job. They took an oath, And it is part of the call to action, the call to duty, if you will. And so there was an unfortunate mistreatment of Vietnam veterans when they returned home from war. And so that's kind of the background for the Vietnam conflict. What was going on and how America entered into this conflict. But we need to discuss now a specific piece of technology and part of the wartime effort that I think was not considered when we entered into the disagreement. For the American efforts in Vietnam, supply chain problems were a problem. Mostly, the longer the chain in a supply chain, the more difficult or more likely you are going to experience a supply chain problem along the way. This is part of what happened in Vietnam. Turns out, when you're trying to stop the spread of communism over 7,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean, and the communists already have support within a couple hundred, if not 1,000 miles from where they are working, it takes a fraction of the time to get communist aid to the region than it does to get aid to those who would seek to stop the spread of it. You have, in short, a supply chain issue. This led to a couple of problems. Sometimes the aid you needed when the aid left port in the U.S. actually changed by the time it arrived in Vietnam. It was such a far journey across the ocean that the aid that was needed, that was loaded onto the vessels that were bringing it, changed by the time those vessels arrived. They often had to make do with what they were sent or given. And if you are fighting in a war and you are being shot at and you are really in a thing of survival, just making do with what you're given is not what you want to hear. There was also drastic shortages. That, coupled with the fact that it was very costly to send these supplies that far away, meant it would often advantage the military financially to send aid after they could totally fill a boat or aircraft and then drop it. That sometimes meant that there was a delay in the aid getting to where it needed when it needed to be there. The boat isn't full. It's not at capacity. This is another reminder about war. War is a big financial game. As such, pilots and ship captains hated to leave to make their deliveries when they were not fully loaded. This occurred so often that they had to make a policy during the Vietnam War. And the policy stated, from the carriers, bomber pilots, they would often leave the ship without a fully loaded engine, not full ammo. And if we're telling the truth, low on morale. You would not, your gas tank would not be on full. Your rations would not be totally supplied. They would have to leave if they had a half load of ordnance, meaning if they weren't completely full. If they were half full, they would still be sent. This policy further damaged morale, with many pilots objecting to the decision as it increased loss rates. That is, people dying because of these choices. At the worst moments of the Vietnam War, we lost one American pilot every day. They run out of fuel, go down, and many times are never seen again. It's not great. Very bad. Often Vietnam soldiers reported feeling helpless, both in wartime efforts, but also in their positions as U.S. servicemen. Navy Strike Fighter Squadron 25 of VFA 25's Naval Air Station is a U.S. airline carrier that operated during the World War II conflict, the Korean War conflict, and the Vietnam Wars. During the Vietnam Wars, this naval air station held and launched the giant piston-powered A-1 Skyraider close air support aircraft. This aircraft, known as a Douglas A-1 Skyraider, is an American single-seat attack plane. It was a propeller-based aircraft and one of the last used before they fully switched to jet-propelled aircraft for wartime. These Douglas A-1 Skyraiders are responsible for some of the earliest strikes against the North Vietnam conflict. While its primary firepower are two built-in 20mm M3 cannons on each wing, each carrying 200 rounds of ammo, they could also carry 15 different pieces of what is called ordnance, or up to 8,000 pounds of ordnance. These could be anything from torpedoes, mines, rockets, gun pods. The most common type of ordnance equipped to the Douglas A-1 Skyraiders were a GE, yes, the people who make your washing machines, a GE GAU-2 six-barrel machine gun that came with a 1,500-round magazine and could fire 4,000 rounds per minute. Ordnance that would be dropped on northern Vietnam was a 100-pound white phosphorus bomb known as a Wiley Pete. This was usually used for signaling purposes, but also could deal destruction and casualty when it landed. The 500-pound low-drag general-purpose bomb, or a Mark 82, was a mechanical impact bomb. It hits the nose, and that mechanism triggers when that force is put, causing the bomb to explode and go off. Another ordnance, known as a sub-munition dispenser, could dispense a variety of things as you flew over, including smoke bombs, pineapple bombs, jungle bombs, gravel mines, etc. And what would happen is, when the plane's ordnance was half full, remember, due to that policy that was put in place during wartime, they would be sent on their flyover missions. But sometimes it would only be half full. And it would even be half full, but it wouldn't be things that you want in that specific situation. You might want to drop a Wiley Pete, but no Wiley Petes have been stocked, and so you're left with dropping gravel bombs and the such. And so there was a feeling from pilots at the time that they were risking, remember, at the worst, it was one American pilot was lost every day. And so they felt like they were risking or putting their lives on the line with possibly no real gain. Yes, we'll do the flyover, we'll drop what we got, but at what cost? Will it even be worth it? These American service people dropped a lot of bombs. In fact, it is estimated over the course of the Vietnam War, as a part of Operation Rolling Thunder, the U.S. dropped nearly 15 million tons of ordnance over Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. It's a lot of ordnance. And I'm not trying to make light of wartime. I'm not. War is serious. People died. It's not great. It's very bad. But I also believe that I would be missing an opportunity to adapt a new euphemism for going to the bathroom. That is, I'm going to drop my ordnance. For the most part, all of this ordnance was in those main types discussed. That is, except for one special ordnance that was dropped in the fall of 1965. What we have now is a report from retired Navy Captain Clint Johnson of the USNR. He stated, quote, I was a pilot on the VA-25, the 1965 Vietnam cruise. 572 was flown by CDR-C Bill Stoddard. His wingman in 577, which was my assigned airplane, was LCDR Robin Bacon, who had a wing station mounted movie camera, the only one remaining on the fleet coming out of World War II. The flight was a Dixie Station strike, southern Vietnam, going into the Delta. When they arrived in the target area and CDR Stoddard was reading the ordnance list to the FAC, the forward air controller, he ended with and one code name, Sanny Flush. The FAC couldn't believe it and joined up to see. It was dropped in a dive with LCDR Bacon flying tight wing position to film the drop. When it came off, it turned whole to the wind and almost struck his airplane. It made a great ready room movie. The FAC said that it whistled all the way to the ground. The toilet was a damaged toilet which was going to be thrown overboard, and one of our plane, this is still the retired naval officer speaking, one of our plane captains rescued it, and the ordnance crew made a rack, tail fins and nose fuse for it. Our checkers maintained a position to block the view of the air boss and the captain while the aircraft was taxiing forward. Just as it was being shot off, we got a 1MC message from the bridge. What the hell was on 572's right wing? There was a lot of jokes with air intelligence about germ warfare. I wish that we'd saved the movie film. CDR Stoddard was later killed while flying 572 in October 1966, hit by 3 SAMs over Vin. This report, given by retired Navy Captain Clint Johnson, captures our main focus on today's topic. And if you didn't catch it based on Johnson's account, Clarence Stoddard, a pilot off of this naval vessel, took off in a plane titled the Paper Tiger II. Strapped to his airplane, in one of the ordnance spots underneath, was a makeshift bomb. It was a toilet that had busted on board the naval carrier, and originally they were going to throw the toilet overboard, make more room. But the pilots and the officers got a hold of the toilet, rigged it and filled it full of explosives, and then set it to detonate on impact. I love the part of his account where they specifically made it to where the captain and other folks who would clear for takeoff couldn't see the toilet hanging from the bottom. And I'll put images in the social media things in the coming weeks. Go check these out. They are fascinating to see. But I love that they're like, yeah, we totally hid it from them until we're on takeoff. And then once we're in the air, they're like, what in the world is attached to his wing? It's a one-of-a-kind bomb for a flight to commemorate the 6 millionth pound of ordnance to be dropped. It solved problems, got rid of waste, get it, because it's a toilet, and allowed their flight to be one where it took off a little more fully loaded. Again, photos will be seen of this strapped. We'll make sure to share those with you. But they spray painted an E on the side of the toilet, which denotes that it has been granted battle effective. I wish my toilet was battle effective. I mean, I guess it faces its own battles on a daily basis. They dropped a toilet bomb on Vietnam, a one-of-a-kind projectile, and maybe one of the most unique uses of a toilet seen to date. That said, it's a reminder that on this American Independence Day, that America's been celebrating things by blowing up stuff over a pretty long time. In this case, we celebrated by dropping an explosive toilet onto Vietnam. It gives a whole new meaning to blowing up the toilet. When he released it mid-dive, as was accustomed. They would dive in their aircraft and release it to help aim where they were going and then come up out of it. The problem is, if you've ever seen anyone drop a toilet off the top of a tall structure or really anything, one of the terms that does not describe a toilet as it's falling through the sky is aerodynamic. It lacks that nice, through the air shape. It flips tips and tumbles, and it turns out toilets like turds flip when falling. That would normally be fine. However, when the toilet begins to do that just after you've released it from the bottom side of your aircraft, it causes a lot of troubles, as that thing potentially causes your aircraft to crash. Thankfully, the pilot did not, and the toilet full of explosives spun all the way to the ground. It goes down in history as that time that America dropped an explosive toilet on Vietnam. This brings us to the end of another episode of Privy. Thank you for listening. If you would, go leave the show a rating and review. The 5-star options are preferred. You can leave that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts, and that helps people find the show. It's not just because gas us up. It helps people find the show. Leave us a rating and review. The 5-star options are preferred. You can leave a written review, and for every rating and review you leave, we will donate some money to Wounded Warriors International and Living Water International. And for those written reviews, we might even bump it up a little bit. We still have our Keep Pooping in the Free World merch on the website. You can go check that out, privy-cast.com/store. We're going to leave that up. It's not just for American Independence Day. It's a reminder that we want to be a part of all the time. Keep Pooping in the Free World. Go check out our merch store. We'll be putting out more things on there as time goes on. Get yourself a Privy hat, Privy shirt, and we've got these very good Privycast mugs. Full disclosure, product testing. I have machine washed this mug multiple times now, and it's holding up great. The screen printing is as good as the day that I got it. Keep things moving. So go get yourself some privy-cast.com/store merch. We would love for you to do that. If you would like, send us an email, privycast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Episode ideas, suggestions, feedback, what have you. If you have a bathroom story you want to share and you want to be on the show, feel free to reach out, privy-cast.com. You can follow the show at Privycast on social media. You can follow me. I'm at Owlet7. Thank you to Kevin and Podington for the use of your music in the episode's intro and outro, as well as transition music. You can find links to all the music and all our sources down in the description below. This brings us to the end of another episode of Privy. Keep pooping in the free world. Own your strengths. Own your stank. Don't be afraid to drop your ordinance with pride. And now, as always, don't forget to flush.